I'm here in the middle of nowhere to prove that the Hilux is number one. Or at the very least give my biased opinion on why I think it's the best bakkie in the world. So I know this is always a fierce debate in South Africa, which bakkie is best. So if you disagree with me, please comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. But in this video, I'm going to share what I always tell friends when they ask advice for which bakkie is the best to buy. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I think the Hilux and the Fortuner or any Toyota SUV or bakkie are the best in the world, or especially in South Africa, are the engines that they use. And I know a lot of people say they are slow, outdated, and we'll get to that in this video. But for the last 30 or so years, Toyota has basically used three engines or diesel engines in the Hilux. They started off with the KZTE, that was in the mid-90s, and they used it for at least 10 years before they switched over to the D4D or the 1KD FTV. I think the bottom end was more or less the same as the KZTE. Let me know if I'm wrong. And then in around 2015, they switched over to this, the GD-6, and they all were four-cylinder turbo diesel engines. And now I'm self-conscious because there's people passing by without the Hiluxes. Nissan? Yeah! And therein lies the biggest advantage I think the Toyota Hilux has over any other bakkie. Now, the only real competitor in terms of sales has been the Ford Ranger. And the problem is with the Fords is they experiment every now and again with new technology, whereas the Hilux uses the same old engine for at least a decade. And if you look closely at the models and how they spread it across the different model ranges, at least in South Africa, is they'll use an engine, especially the diesels, first in the Hilux, the cheaper off-road vehicle, and then once it's proven itself, it will move up towards the Prado. So that's why you found the KZT engine still in the Prado 120, while the Hilux has already moved on to the D4D and the Fortuner, obviously. In Europe it was different, and Australia. And then once the D4D has proven itself in the Hilux and the Fortuner, only then did they move it on to the 150 series. And by that time, they started using the GD-6 in the Hilux. And then when that proved itself, it went to the new Prado that you can find now, that only came out in 2025. And now they also started using this GD-6 in the Land Cruiser, the 76 series or the 70 series. And they wouldn't have done that if it hasn't proven itself in the Hilux and then in the Prado. And the same is for the petrol engines. I don't know all the codes that well. It was the 2.7 that was a bulletproof engine, and then for a short while they had the 3.7. It was never in the Hilux, but it was in the Prado 95. Both amazing engines, and then they moved on to the 4-liter 1GR or GR1. I don't know. Comment below if I got it wrong. And that engine really proved itself first in the Hilux, then in the Prado, and then in the Land Cruiser, and they still use the petrol engine in all of them. And you can get a replacement engine or a rebuilt engine on exchange for as low as 35,000 Rand on that 1GR. The diesels are a bit more expensive. And the thing is, when they launched the new Hilux now, the 2026 model, the one that everyone says looks like a cut and paste Chinese clone, they're still using the same GD-6 engine and drivetrain, and I think chassis, that they started using back in 2015. The nice thing about that is we know it will keep on going forever. This one has 285,000 kilometers. It tows a very heavy caravan, an Explorer. My Fortuner has 333,000 kilometers on the clock with the D4D. I tow a heavy Explorer. My friend's whose bakkie this is, dad drives a Fortuner with over 300,000 kilometers. He tows a big, heavy caravan. And the thing is, I bought my Fortuner at 308,000 kilometers on the clock from We Buy Cars on an online auction, not knowing the history. It ended up having a full service history, but that is not someone anyone would recommend on a Ford Ranger or an Amarok or some other bakkie. Maybe an Isuzu, maybe a Nissan, but definitely No one would, in their right mind, recommend to a friend to buy a 2-liter bi-turbo Amarok with 300,000 Ks and then tow a heavy caravan into the middle of nowhere. But on a Hilux, that's sort of par for the course, and you'll still pay good money for it. So that's the engine. And another thing on the engines with the Hilux is the engineering. On the Ford Rangers, the 2-liter bi-turbo and the Amarok uses the same engine. I think it uses a lot of Ford Ranger parts, as far as I understand. They started using that wet belt technology where the timing belt sits within the oil, so it dips into the oil. Same with the oil pump belt. And any car where the engineers thought that is a good idea just makes me worry. What else are they getting wrong? And they are changing it in 2026 to a chain drive, and they say it's for reliability or durability. So obviously it's a terrible design. It makes it more difficult to change the timing belt. On this, it's a 2-3 hour job, and you don't have to take the injectors out, you don't have to lift the rocker cover off. On this, you don't have to, I think, let me know in the comments, you don't have to remove the steering rack to remove the oil pan to clean the oil strainer once those rubbery bits goes into the oil strainer. So on the Ford Ranger, the 2-liter at least, that's what you have to do for routine maintenance. And if engineers does that, how can you trust the thing to go on forever? Whereas the Hilux, yes, there are the pistons that crack. As far as I understand, it's a Euro 4 or some design. I have heard of people who has happened before on their cars. Apparently the older D4Ds were fine. I haven't heard on the GD-6 of major issues. Yes, there's some minor issues that people complain about. But if you look at the sales figures, these outsell other brands multiples of times. So that's another big advantage, is there's just so many of these around. So that means the know-how out in the field is much bigger than any other vehicle. So no matter where you go, there's always a Toyota dealership in the town. So like even if you go to Botswana, Namibia, or small towns in South Africa, there's always a Toyota dealer. So you'll get parts, you'll get know-how, and even independent workshops or bush mechanics, they know the KZTE, the D4D, and now the GD6 with 10 years of experience. So they'll always be able to at least help you or get a part shipped over and replace it for you. Whereas if you drive some new Amarok or Ford Ranger or Triton, it's less, there's less experience out there in the field, especially because they keep on changing the technology all the time. So yeah, the Hilux is just gives you better peace of mind. And then talking about sales figures, the Hilux has outsold all the other bakkies for decades now. Maybe there were a month or two where the Ford outsold it. I can't remember of a month like that. I'll post the sales figures on the screen for the most recent month if I can find it. But statistically, people just vote. If you look at votes, they vote for this more than any other vehicle. So that also gives some peace of mind. And then just from my own experience, which is very, very limited, working on Toyotas in the past has been just easier. When I had my Prado 95, that was 3-liter V6 petrol, the spark plugs is just easily accessible. You just take them out. It takes 10 minutes to replace all 6. Whereas the Pajero of the same time, the 3.5 V6, you had to remove the whole intake plenum and it was under there. So it's an hour or 2 job for a novice like me. And like I mentioned, the Ford Ranger, where you have to remove the steering rack, that's the 2-liter bi-turbo, the steering rack, in order to get to the oil pan, or you have to remove the injectors and the timing cover just to replace the timing belt. Whereas on this, a big front end job is just super easy because everything is outside the engine, under a plastic cover. And then finally, resale value. If you buy a Toyota, yes, there is the odd chance that you can actually make a profit if you sell it a year or 2 later, especially with some models like the Land Cruiser bakkies or the 76 series. And now the V8s that are discontinued, they are getting scarce, so people end up selling it for more than what they paid for it originally. And that is, from my experience and from watching second-hand car prices, not the same with other brands. So yes, I know this is very biased, unashamedly. I can't back any of this with facts or proof that I can reference. So that's why I want you to please comment below if you disagree with me, and let me know why you think a different brand is better than the Hilux, or if you think they're all the same, that's a valid comment. I don't think so, and if I had to use my own money, I will always prefer a Toyota over any other brand. Maybe I'm brainwashed. Anyways, let me know what you think, and Happy New Year. It's the 1st of January 2026 now. And I'm here in the West Coast in the Namakwa National Park. Tomorrow I have to drive 2,000 km back home, towing my heavy 1.5 ton Jurgens Explorer with my 330,000 kilometer Toyota Fortuner D40. Cheers.